history of this event and the achievements of the international cooperation within the Union State was presented at the celebratory event in the Embassy of the Belarus and Russian Federation on March 31st, and on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. And of course, from all of us, we send heartfelt wishes to all the citizens of Russia and Belarus on this great event. We wish subsequent development, strengthening of sovereignty and authority on the international stage, as well as flourishment, success, great health, happiness, well-being, as well as faith in themselves and their own powers, because together we can achieve anything. And that's the only key to our success. And now we move on to the situation that is obvious to us, but for many of those in the world minority, to them it's not as obvious. The situation around the Ukrainian crisis, the Kyiv regime, country has lost its sense of self-preservation, and it's trying, no matter the price, to undermine. And before that, they tried to claim victory, to impose a defeat or whatever their wording was. But right now, they're desperately trying not to claim victory over someone, not to strengthen their own positions, but to undermine the Russian-American dialogue that has launched, using terrorist methods, striking energy infrastructure objects daily. Why am I paying special attention? Because starting on March 18th, it's starting on this date. It's in action the mutual moratorium on the strikes on the energy system. And starting on this day, supposedly, because it's not being followed by the Kyiv regime, we see targeted attacks on the objects of the energy infrastructure of the Russian Federation that, despite the statements of the Ukrainian side about supposedly military necessity, are clearly of the provocative and demonstrative nature. Facts speak for themselves. Over this period, there was over 30 strikes against our objects of energy infrastructure in Belgorod, Bryansk, Zaporozhye region, in Krasnodar Krai, Kursk and Kherson regions. And it's important to point out that all those strikes have been launched using Western weapons that are used for terrorist attacks against our civilian infrastructure. Just a few examples. For those who continue to live under the illusions, so they could get a real picture, on March 31st, 10:08 a.m. in Zaporozhye region, after the attack of the Ukrainian UAV, there were at least 4 UAV launches against the electrical station in Novogorivsk. This is the Guptavia Energo. There was an electric cut of the home users in the 2 residential villages in the Tokmakovsk region. At the same day, at 11:38 in Belgorod region, after the strike of Ukrainian UAV against the transformatory station in Smorodina, a high voltage line has been cut, with electricity cut for over 1,200 consumers in the Grivoronsk region. On April the 2nd, the Ukrainian armed forces used UAV to strike the gas station Svatova in LPR, and the Kyiv regime, feeling their coming defeat, trying at any price to provoke an escalation and to attract their British and European patrons in a direct confrontation with Russia. And obviously they have no result. As the Russian Ministry of Defense points out, all the objects are securely protected. There is no threat to the population. But that's the idea of the Kiev regime, not to cause direct damage, but create new pretext for another wave of hysteria in Western mass media and try to undermine the dialogue that has already started between Moscow and Washington. So the actions of the Kiev regime are not just war crimes, but it's a deliberate course to undermine any peaceful initiatives. Just take a look. Over the last 3 years, they've tried everything, and I don't just mean the Minsk agreements that we tried to get from the Kiev regime over 7 years, but even over the last 3 years, even direct negotiations with the representatives of Bankova, despite how obvious it was at the moment that chance was used. Direct negotiations did take place. They took place, they lasted for several rounds. There were also numerous statements, regular statements of Moscow. As for the diplomatic settlement is our preferred way of action. There were also constant reminders of the Russian Federation that the Kiev regime has prohibited themselves having any negotiations with our side. We've tried everything. And whereas in the West, as if under the order that only in the battlefield a solution could be found and this issue, this crisis could be settled, when they understood that that which they bet on of the victory of the Kiev regime will never see the light of day. That's when they've changed their tune, tried to talk about the peaceful negotiations. The Kiev regime did, once again, everything in their power to undermine them at the stage of the idea and up to the point of any kind of realization, and even any reassurances that were given by Zelensky. As for them following this condition, that has been undermined on the exact same day. Russia will not fall prey to any provocations, but responsibility for the consequences of this destructive policy will be fully on Bankova and their mentors, who continue to follow the craziest criminal actions of the Bankova. I would like to say a few more words around the Ukrainian crisis. The Kiev regime, as we've already mentioned, contrary to the commitments it has made, is still striking our energy infrastructure. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, from March 26th to 31st this year, the targets of the AFU's artillery and drones were the facilities of Rossetti Center in the Bryansk, Belgorod, and Kursk region, an electric substation in the Zaporozhye region, ground equipment in the Glebovsky underground gas storage facility in Crimea, the Saratov oil refinery, etc. Among the targets, they already include the gas metering equipment and the Suja gas metering station in the Kursk region. After the attack of the Ukrainian Armed Forces on March 28 this year was destroyed. On April the 2nd, the AFU launched a drone strike on the Svatova gas distribution station in the LPR. So we're providing factual information that showcases how the Kiev regime is undermining exactly what it publicly agreed to. Moratorium on launching strikes on the energy civil infrastructure. We would like to emphasize once again that the continuing terror of the Kiev regime against the Russian energy sector only confirms its lack of commitment. Bankova lacks the political will for peace. They're still determined to escalate the conflict and are ready to any provocation to undermine efforts to achieve any settlement of the Ukrainian crisis. And this is not the only crime. Against the background of renewed dialogue between Moscow and Washington, the Kiev regime, with the support of its so-called European partners, is not reducing the intensity of strikes against civilian facilities on Russian territory.
The number of attacks against civilian population of the country does not decrease. Since March 24th to March 30th, 118 civilians have been targeted by attacks. 14 of them died, 104 were injured, including 3 minors. The majority of those affected have been in the territory of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics and the Kherson region. At this period, in Horlovka, for example, the Ukrainian strike resulted in the injuries of the TV channel in Donetsk. In the DPR in Lysychansk, a 14-year boy was injured during a strike from the multiple launch missile system in the village of Mikhailovka. A female doctor and a driver of the ambulance have been attacked in the village of Petrovka. And also in Gorlovka, a 13-year-old boy and 4 other civilians were attacked with cluster munitions. And on the 1st of April, the AFU attacked a regular bus with passengers at the Victory Square and at the center of the city. 16 people were injured. An 86-year-old woman died as a result of a UAV strike against a civilian house in the Verkhnya Krynica village on the Zaporozhye region. The Rostov region was attacked from air on April 2nd. As a result of this, a house in Taganrog was damaged and 1 person was injured. In the Kursk region, the retreating Ukrainian Nazis in their impotent rage are attacking the civilians with UAVs. We see new facts of deliberate mining of the locations adjoining the civilian areas. We see that we heard some news that Ukrainian militants in Suja offered locals bread, and then in cold blood they murdered those civilians. We find new victims in wells, in gardens, houses, and cars, but it's not all, it's not everything. The Ukrainian Nazis are profiting of this. Just to think of it, you cannot stoop any lower. But of course, there is always potential for more depravity. We see some auctions or selling stuff that was stolen from the civilians in the Kursk region. They are selling goods that has been stolen from the region. They've been marauding the Russian region, and the AFU militants resorted to every means possible. The Kazachya Lukne village in Kursk region saw the fact that the locals were not allowed to bury their loved ones, whose bodies were strewn across the streets, until they got the information that the Western journalists were having to visit the village. Then the remains were cleared out with shovels. Another evidence of the participation of foreign mercenaries in combats in the border region in Kursk was the discovery of a corpse of one of the bandits